So for anybody that's been with me before at these town halls, I really like to keep it informal. I'll give kind of like a 5-10 minute overview and then just happy to open it up to questions for the time that we have here. A few quick updates. So the big item that came up before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on Tuesday. It's starting to wind its way through the legislative process now, but we are going to make an appropriation of $201,000 out of the Opioid Abatement Trust Fund. So for a little bit of background on the trust fund, so when the state of New Hampshire sued a pharmaceutical company and won, that money comes into the state of New Hampshire and then it filters down to municipalities. So Manchester has a portion of those funds that come to us. So one of the things, and it'll be coming to us for at least the next 17 years or so. So it's incumbent upon us as a city to determine how we want to spend those opioid abatement dollars. So a program that came before us and made a pitch, and I think it was a really good one, was Hope for New Hampshire Recovery. They have a Hope Connections project whereby they're basically creating like a mobile crisis unit for the city of Manchester to Just kidding. Glad you were able to make it. Traffic was bad?
Yeah, there's a train on Granite Street.
Get out.
Or at least the lights for it.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here.
Thanks. What did I miss?
Just kicking off with the opioid abatement.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, from last night. Yeah. So there was two pieces to this opioid abatement allocation. So one piece was the peer-to-peer support. So for those who are familiar with SUD or mental health space, peer-to-peer support counseling is those individuals who work with either an individual who is unhoused or has an SUD or a mental health issue and tries to get them connected to services. The other portion to this that we're going to fund out of the trust fund is a case manager. So when I met with nonprofits last year, I met with all the big nonprofits in the state of New Hampshire, and I said, what would make the biggest, most dramatic impact on homelessness? And they said having a case manager at the engagement center or having a case manager through the city. Because what a case manager does is, exactly as the title would suggest, they manage individual cases. So if you want to get somebody from point A to point Z, so if you're unhoused on the streets of Manchester, and ultimately the end goal, the end state is to get them into housing, get them sustainably employed, education if they need it, connection to vouchers, you need a case manager to help walk and shepherd somebody through that process. So through the trust fund last night, we began the legislative process. Now it'll go to CIP on the March 4th meeting, and then we'll vote on it from the full Board of Mayor and Aldermen. But really exciting. This has a huge opportunity or tremendous opportunity to make a big difference and impact in the city. Actually, before I forget, I want to make sure I point out Vice Chairman O'Connell from the Board of School Committee. Your high-speed alderman, Norm Vincent, from right here in Ward 11, and then Liz O'Neill, your school board member, sent her regrets, but she's actually, what is the committee hearing?
She's at the Student Conduct Committee at City Hall.
So under the Board of School Committee, they have the Student Conduct Committee, and she is representing you now as we speak at this committee, so she sent her regrets in not being able to make it. So yeah, that was the biggest, last night was what was that, Andy? We must have set a record last night, 40 minutes, 41 minutes in and out. Yeah, very, very quick, but that was the biggest.
She asked me if there was a meeting last night because she tuned in and it was already over.
Yeah, right.
Your Honor, since you're both new fathers, did that have anything to do with?
I don't know if it's but maybe it was for him.
I don't like to use that, but there are times when I'll look at somebody and say, do we really need to be asking this question right now? Because we're ready to scoot here, and I will use that to my advantage if I have to. So another few things that have been in the news. One item I wanted to touch on was bail reform. So we've all kind of seen the news over the last 7 to 10 days. I think there were two instances that really kind of brought to light something that I've been arguing in favor of for the last 3 years. So the statistics that I have from the city of Manchester in 2024, about 4,500 arrests were conducted in the city of Manchester. Of those 4,500, 2,700 individuals were responsible for those 4,500 arrests because they were repeat offenses. About 24% of people in the city of Manchester who were arrested in 2024 were released on personal recognizance bail. So the argument that I would make is that we cannot continue to release repeat and violent offenders into this or onto the streets of the city of Manchester. That's not to suggest that everybody that was arrested and rearrested was a violent offender, but clearly we've had instances where an individual has been released on PR bail only to commit an additional crime, and what we've seen is individuals are rearrested not once, twice, three, but in some instances 4, 5, 6 times. So obviously I think that creates a public safety emergency for the city of Manchester, but it also places a huge undue burden on our police department. We got a report last night. Typically we hover around 20 vacancies in the police department. Right now we have 23 police vacancies in the department. So you have a short-staffed department now has to do additional work because they have to go out and arrest the same people over and over again. And these are a lot of times these are for more like quality of life offenses, the things that really impact the city on a ground level. I think the state legislature made a good step, took a good first step in 2024 when they took out the so-called the Big 13, I think they called it, for the most violent, severe offenses. Those people don't have the opportunity to get bail, but I think it's those lower level, mid-level offenses and the violent and the repeat attempts that are really impacting the city of Manchester. So I gave my State of the City address last week. I won't bore you with the 23-minute address that I gave, but we covered the big topics that I think are on a lot of people's minds here in the city. So affordable housing, public safety, homelessness, education we touched upon as well, and then addiction. Those were the big topics. Happy to go over. I don't want to bore you with every single one, but happy to answer any questions if you have on anything specific in there. One thing I would note is, so looking forward, I've always been a big believer, for those who have ever heard me speak before or read it in the paper or whatever, but I have a countdown clock in my office. We got about 325 days left in my term as mayor. But I think as an executive, you always have to think about what is the condition that you are leaving the city in? Are you planting the seeds for success today that will be able to reap into the future? So I think as an executive, it's inherently incumbent upon us to plan for the future. I can't just think in terms of election cycles. I can't just think in terms of weeks or months. We have to think in terms of years. So one of the things that I want to do in the coming weeks is unveil a plan, Together We Rise, 50 initiatives, one future for the city of Manchester. So 50 different initiatives that I think we can implement over the coming 2, 3, 4, 5 years that could have a really solid impact on the city of Manchester. And that's a couple of things that I talked about in the address. So I ripped off 5 of them in the address. I'll see if I can remember them. But one was, one of the things that I've heard consistently at our town halls is the condition of our roads. So this year in the budget, I want to make a historic investment in our roads. I think if you look at what some other cities have done around the country and what we see with artificial intelligence, I think that's going to be an important part of our future, assuming the robots don't take over as a result of it and destroy humanity. But I think that there's a really good function that AI can play in city government, both in delivering services to individuals, but also making it easier for you to become involved with the city, or making those interactions easier. So a ChatGPT chat box on a city website. How do I find this? Who is responsible for this, right? Like, how do we make it a more user-friendly service for you all? But I also think that AI could potentially be used in things like identifying waste in city government, or identifying efficiencies in city government. Where can we do things better? And that's what I talk about when I think we have to think long-term about the city. An additional piece is lighting in the downtown. If you look at some pictures of some other cities across the United States, the downtowns are always extraordinarily lit up, and it's beautiful and it's inviting. It creates a warm environment, but it also has an impact on public safety as well. Crimes are not usually committed either in broad daylight or in really well-lit areas. When I talk to businesses in the downtown, this is one of the things they talk about. Like Hanover Street looks beautiful. I have a great view of it from my office. All of the downtown should be lit up like that. So that's one of the initiatives that I want to have in the budget, is to light up the downtown area. I think it'll be great for both the perception of the city of Manchester, but also the reality of living in Manchester. Brings in more potential commerce, could bring in more businesses. So I'm really excited about that. The other piece I would add is our Our city just hired a grant coordinator for the first time in our city's history, and this is in large part due to Alderman Vincent really pressing this case and making the case to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Think about it like this. We are one of the only cities of our size, 115,000 people, that does not have a grant coordinator, which means when the city wants to do something or expand our ability to deliver services or add a position, that is going to be borne by you, the taxpayer. But if we can have a grant coordinator and then we can look at partnering with our community partners, with the nonprofits in the city, we could band together and we could build different programs in the city at no cost to you all, because ultimately the grant writer would pay for itself because they get a 10% implementation cost when you're, 10% indirect that goes to the implementation of the grant. So it pays for itself, and we could bring a lot more dollars into the city of Manchester. And then the last piece that I would add, the fifth one that I talked about, was an age-friendly action plan. If you look at the census from 2020 to 2025, the city is actually getting younger, which is different from the rest of the state of New Hampshire, but we also have a population 65 and older that's getting older, which is going to create challenges for the city, both from a healthcare standpoint, but also, there are some really, you could talk about this better than I can, but there are some really interesting studies on loneliness and what that does to a person's body. Being lonely is almost more dangerous, or may be more dangerous than smoking cigarettes. Right, so what are we doing for our elderly population in the city of Manchester to make sure that both they have all the resources that they need in their own homes, but also making sure that they have things to do to keep them lively? If you ever go over to the Cashin Center, I try to get over there once every other month or so, and they're over there and they're kicking my behind in Wii bowling, and there's Zumba classes below. There's pool tables. It's an incredible place to go, but I think it's an important resource for the seniors in the city of Manchester. I want to say that the numbers I gave at my address was that there were over 10,000 signups for the Cashin Center. If you've been to the Cashin Center, maybe it could house 100, 150 people. So there is an extraordinary need for this in the city of Manchester. So that's a few things going on in the city. That was my State of the City address from last week. Yeah, I did it in 13 minutes. Would love to open it up to any questions you might have. I'm going to grab my water if you don't mind. But any questions? What do we have? I see a notebook. You look primed and ready to go.
I am an MSW student for year 8. I'm motivated to be here because of a class I'm taking on being a new organization.
Oh, that's wonderful. Where did you say you're going to school?
UNH.
Okay, my wife's getting her bachelor's at SNU right now.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit more about bail reform and how you envision that being a helpful thing for this situation that you're trying to solve. It seems to me that we're talking about, lock them up or don't lock them up. What happens
So I think,
if we do lock them up? How are we going to help them?
sure, phenomenal question. Have you, are you doing a report or a paper on it? Okay, perfect. Then after this meeting, let me connect you to Joe Costanzo, who's the superintendent at Hillsborough County. So he has done so he used to be the superintendent of the county jail up in Merrimack, and he won incredible plaudits nationwide for some of the programs that he implemented behind bars in Merrimack County. So if you go into Hillsborough County right now, you can get connected to SUD services, mental health services, medication-assisted treatment. They have recovery programs that go in there. Look, it's still jail, right? It's not a fun place to be. But here's where the individuals that argue against bail reform, here is the argument that I would make. So from my vantage point, hey, Alicia, how you doing? From my vantage point, there are individuals, this is beyond bail reform, but just generally speaking, I got sober, well, if I'm blessed enough, I'll be 15 years sober next month, right? So I got sober because I was tired of getting in trouble. That's not an argument to arrest your way out of the problem, because clearly that is not the solution, and that is not something that I would advocate. But I do think that there is something to be said for holding an individual accountable when they make mistakes. I also used to work in this space. I worked for a national nonprofit that helped people with addiction issues. And if you look at somebody, I'm sure you've done it if you're an MSW or going to be, but when I worked at this place, we looked at people, brain scans of people who were in active addiction, brain scans of people who have been sober for 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years, and on down the line. When a person is in active addiction, the frontal lobe is lit up like a big red balloon. Frontal lobe, for everybody, I'm sure you're aware, but that's where you make all your decisions. So when you're using drugs or alcohol, the part of your brain that's making decisions is broken. So I would argue that you're not necessarily penalizing that individual if you are arresting them, but you're actually giving them an opportunity to get connected to services that their brain... Addiction is the only disease that tells you you're well. Addiction is a disease that will tell you, like, you may feel like you have a 100-degree fever, but you should go out and run a marathon, right? Your brain's broken. So if you can get connected to services, at Hillsborough County Jail, and you're doing a 3-month or a 6-month stint there, and you can get connected, and you otherwise wouldn't get connected, I would define that as the more compassionate response than allowing somebody to disintegrate effectively on the streets of Manchester.
So do you see that as being the crux of the issue, that the folks who are having repeated contacts with Manchester PD are not having that opportunity to get onboarded?
I think our brain works on a risk-reward scenario. I think that's where we're mammals. I think the brain works, if I do this and I'm not penalized for it, then it must be a good thing, right? So I do think holding an individual accountable. Now, I go to every single drug court graduation and speak to it, right? So those people, most of those individuals have been incarcerated at one point or another, or at the very least, they're facing a significant incarceration term. But I do think those are the perfect kinds of things where a carrot and stick approach works, right? So we're gonna hold you accountable, but if you go through these processes, we will wipe the slate clean and you won't have to serve time. So I do think that balanced approach makes a great deal of sense. Yeah, of course. Yes, sir. I saw you had your hand raised and I called on her.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Kevin.
Yeah.
I live on Ribbon Street here on the west side with my girlfriend and our dog, Cora. And I walk up
What
there
kind of
now.
dog?
Yeah.
What kind of dog?
Oh, mostly German short-haired pointer.
Okay.
Yeah, hunting dog. So she's trouble on the leash sometimes.
Yeah.
I walk a fair amount
Mhm.
to get places in Manchester. I like walking from Ribbon Street downtown for errands. We walk our dog, obviously. And one of our hang-ups, because we are looking for a home in Manchester actively right now, one of my hang-ups on Manchester, and that kind of grinds my gears sometimes, is certain areas that don't seem very friendly or hospitable to pedestrians. I've spoken at the Board of Mayor and Alderman meetings about this a few times last year. And while I do really appreciate certain elements of Manchester, such as the rail trails, our parks, etc., in fact, it is a fairly walkable city, I am concerned about certain elements of pedestrian unfriendly infrastructure, I would say, that seem to prioritize higher speed vehicles, that seem to involve large roadways that are hard to cross, even when they're in the direct vicinity of downtown. And so I'm wondering what plans you might have, what your opinions might be about developing pedestrian infrastructure going forward, be it either creating more foot traffic downtown for local businesses, caring about the safety of students who are walking to schools, and especially if you're interested in any of these initiatives that other cities are signing up for. I think Concord, I might not be right about that, but there are a few. One of them is called Complete Streets, which is about redesigning streets to make them a little bit more hospitable to pedestrians, people with disabilities. Also Vision Zero, which aspires to 0 traffic fatalities in a year. I'm wondering if you're interested in any of those initiatives, or if you have any other plans.
Yeah, so I've lived in other places around the country. I worked in Washington, D.C. for a bit, and walkable communities were all the rage in some of the places that I lived, like Silver Spring. I lived in D.C. for a time. I lived in Alexandria, Virginia, and Courthouse, Virginia, Arlington. Like all those areas, they have huge areas where they are walkable communities. It's one of the things that we talked about in the master plan that was done before I became mayor. There are big pieces in that. Now, obviously, you can't revamp 115,000 person city that's been here for a couple hundred years overnight. But these are the kinds of things that we can implement through Department of Public Works, where we talk about what is the long-term strategy for the city of Manchester. So right now, like we're looking at, we've gotten some grants to do this kind of work and looking at, where can we implement those? So like the downtown area, I think is the first place where it would start, and how do we create a walkable environment in these areas, but certainly in, not the outskirts, but certainly like places like over here on the west side. I love that. I think if you're going to create a city for the long term, you have to do it in mind of what is the city, what does it look like now, but what does it need to look like 10, 15, 20 years from now if we're going to retain individuals and bring people into the city of Manchester. Because any score across the country when they're scoring cities, that's one of the questions that they ask the residents that live there. Is it walkable? What are you looking for? And these are the things that pop up.
For sure. And I was also kind of wondering, I know there is a plan to repave many of the roads in the city. You've talked about this. It came up in a Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting recently, a 5-year plan or something like that.
Yeah, $12 million a year is what we would have to be spending to just keep pace with the regular wear and tear of our roads.
Okay, and in terms of the way you work with DPW, would you be interested in revamping some of our streets, particularly like the more dangerous intersections that people
Yeah,
can talk
well,
about?
we just got a grant from the feds to do a road, or to do a survey of, it's not over here, it's more in the inner city part of Manchester. But those are the kinds of things that we can look at is, so what does this road look like currently? What could it look like? Are there pedestrian-friendly things that we can add to it? Does it make sense to put a park in one of these areas or a green space where people can congregate?
Okay, cool. What's the name of that grant? Just curious.
I'd have to go back and check. Yeah, we put it out about a month ago.
The one with the picking the streets?
Yeah, it was a $2.1 million grant from, I think it's a SMART grant.
I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just add something there? So just tonight, there's a meeting on tonight at about Wolf Park
Yeah.
on the west side, and that meeting's on at the Cashin Center. So
Right.
it sort of goes together. And Wolf Park, if you've seen the work that DPW was doing in developing Wolf Park, it's going to be, well, it's sort of like a Doors Pond on the other side, but without the pond. But the whole area will have walking trail around it, the addition of pickle courts and all that stuff. But the new mall, the announcement is tonight. There's an unveiling of a lot of it. So that's going to be a first on this side of the river, that there'll be a park of that size that people can walk and recreate it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I guess continuing on walkability and stuff, I know with the $12 million a year stuff, revisiting complete streets, I think it's kind of a great time for the city to look into that. I think that kind of opens up funding opportunities so that as taxpayers, we don't have to, bear that whole burden and then,
Right.
Fall behind further. And then also kind of on the efficiency front, I know I was here last year talking about the crosswalk signs on Elm Street that don't exist still. And so efficiency-wise, I'm just wondering if there's any way that you could kind of work with DPW to allow them to install things like that without, having to come to the Board of Aldermen and put everything through committee for something that's, Federal Highway Administration documents and says that's a proven safety countermeasure. Why does it have to be approved? And I think that's a real inefficiency here.
Yeah, actually, Alderman Vincent and I have talked about this repeatedly. If you want to talk about it, you're more than welcome to. But effectively, the conversations that Alderman Vincent and I have had is you tell him, he doesn't like bureaucracy, and nor do I. And we want
funneling stuff through somebody just to say yes when 98% of the time it's always a yes. So I chair the traffic committee, and I work with the.
So complain to him. I'm kidding.
So my guidance was there's no need for it, so I made a motion to their directors. They run the show. It's their lane. If it's common sense is the kind of way I wrote it, because that's kind of common sense, right?
Yeah.
The crosswalk needs to be fixed. Why did the alderman need to sit there and say, yeah, you need to fix that, then it goes before the next meeting to get approved. So
And now it's an entire month
now
you've
you're looking
lost.
at almost a month before somebody even says, yeah, we'll put it on the schedule. So now what I've tried to do with that committee is I've tried to give them the power in those departments to do what they need to do. If it's something that involves us, if there's a dispute between individuals and then we have to get involved, by all means, it has to go through the alderman. But I'm trying to push the other committees to do the same thing. We need to be less involved in things that, these guys are directors. They're very knowledgeable, they're subject matter experts. They know a lot more about roads and paving than I do. So who am I to say, no, you can't pave that road? If the road needs to be paved, it needs to be put at the top tier. And there's an order of merit, you know, with the more priority schools, churches, hospital areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're working,
Yeah.
but it's a work. We got it through one committee, we're working with the other ones. I'm trying to make it more efficient, because you could sit through those committee meetings, and when you sit through a committee meeting, if you watch it, how many times is there no's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Committee meetings, some committee meetings can have 8 items on it, and we can get through it in 15 minutes. And that's not to say we're not doing our job, because behind the scenes, we get the list on Wednesday, Thursday sometimes, depending on when it comes out. And then the aldermen on that panel are communicating with each other, and they're talking to the directors that's pertinent to that area. And we say, hey, what's your say on this? And the directors are usually the ones that say, yeah, it's a good call, let's make it happen. And then we execute, we say, yep, it's good to go. So I don't want you to think, or anybody in the public to think, that we're not doing any work, because the work goes on behind the scenes. But it is kind of inefficient when it goes before a panel, a committee, because then it sits there for another meeting, unless we push it up that night. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
So you're 100% right, and I am working, and the mayor's on top of it as well, so hopefully, in the near future, you're gonna see less.
But also, I mean, I would have mentioned last year the app, the C-Click Fix. So if you're telling me that it's been a year that something hasn't been addressed, then I can forward that immediately over if it hasn't.
I've actually had conversations with the director of DPW. I don't want to get like into the weeds right now, but I've had like back and forth conversations where essentially the reasoning behind it was that there was not enough data from the police. I don't know why we're waiting for someone to get hit by a car. And also I have heard that we need to be waiting for the police to enforce jaywalking, which I know you just talked about. They're 23 officers short. I don't think it's efficient to wait for officers to do something they don't have the time to do for crosswalk signs.
Yeah.
So,
But if you're telling, is the issue that you're referring to that there is a crosswalk sign that doesn't have lights in it?
no,
No.
there's no crosswalk signs.
Oh, there's no crosswalk sign. Oh, so you want to put crosswalks in
Yeah,
to slow down
and
traffic?
I've
Okay.
had several interactions where I've almost been hit there. I've seen people almost get hit by cars that
Okay.
are just not.
Is this here, or is this?
This is downtown on Elm
Oh.
Street.
If you
Okay.
want, I'll give you my card, you shoot me an email.
Okay, yeah, we can
It's
talk
not
about
Yeah.
it.
hard to open a dialect, and I can definitely go bad, and we can talk about it, figure it out.
Yeah.
Too easy.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll go here and then here. Okay.
Hi, my name's Alicia. I live in this ward. My son actually goes to this school. I used to actually work at this school as well. I have a couple of things. And as far as like the traffic goes, I wanted to add on to that. In this neighborhood in the morning is absurd with the traffic. I have lived in a community, not in this state, where I've seen police actually sitting in the neighborhoods, making sure that people are following the rules. The traffic in the morning for dismissal in this neighborhood is absurd. And I live at the end of the street, it's not far from here. And I feel like Manchester needs to increase a police presence in the schools during the morning when kids are going to school, in the afternoon when kids are walking home, not just necessarily right around the school, but also in the neighborhoods, to make sure that the traffic, they're stopping at the stop signs, they're not running the stop signs, they're not rolling to the stop signs. And it's absurd in the mornings and in the afternoons. And this parking lot, for instance, is also a nightmare sometimes. I know the principal has sent out emails. It's been an ongoing issue for years. I've seen it 2 years at least. I think a police presence within the schools, within the school zones should definitely be required.
Okay.
At some
I
point.
Yeah.
I can actually address that, it's on my list that I have plans to talk with the chief about that, because I've gotten several emails about that.
That's crazy.
And we're gonna try to, I'm gonna try to see if we
Conant Street
can,
is, it's
terrible.
absurd.
It's terrible.
There's 3 schools within this one area.
and there's so many
And
kids
the
walking
traffic,
in the cars, so
how they drive.
I'm gonna work with the chief, and I'm gonna see if we can try to get something where we can get some more presence. I don't know what the answer will be as far as numbers, but I can guarantee there'll be something different.
It definitely needs to be, it
It's on
definitely
my
needs
list
to be
that I was gonna
addressed.
tell you about. Yep,
Because it's crazy.
I was gonna tell you, yep.
Okay.
And then my second thing is, you know, I know that the city always talks about homeless, and you know, you and I have had all conversations about this as well, about homeless. And at what point do we also talk about the residents that are actually paying these rent prices and trying to move into apartments? Families that are living in smaller apartments that should be living in bigger apartments but can't afford to move into bigger apartments because of the prices, because of everything that's going on. Like, at what point does Manchester also address that issue?
Yeah. So that's what I talk about when I talk about affordable housing. So a big piece of my address last week was talking about our efforts to bring in more affordable housing to the city of Manchester, and we've done a couple things to that end. I'll give you like a broad overview right now of one of the great things, but also one of the challenges that it presents us. So for the 30th time, Manchester has been ranked the #1 hottest housing market in the United States, which I think is great in that it shows that I think we're doing some good things if people want to move to Manchester more than any other location, but also that creates upward pressure on housing prices, right? Basic supply and demand. If you have a limited supply, you have a high demand, prices do what? They go through the roof, right? So that's the challenge that we run into. So what do we have to do then? We have to create more supply. So a few things that we're doing on that front. For the first time in 23 years, we're undergoing a zoning rewrite right now. And the whole idea behind that is kind of basically simple. It's we need to create more density in specific areas where it makes sense. Like we're not putting a high-rise 30-story building in the middle of a single-family neighborhood. You're identifying where more density makes sense. The more units that you bring online, the pressure should decrease on the prices and they should come down. And we're actually seeing that in some of the apartment buildings in the city of Manchester that are now, maybe they started, like new ones opening up, maybe they started by saying first month rent is free. Now they're doing first month, last month rent is free. Now they're doing like first 2 months are free and the last month is free because they have to lower their prices. So we have to bring more units online into the city of Manchester. The second thing that we've done is last year we, as part of my kickoff in my inaugural address, what I said was I wanted to identify every parcel of land that's in the city of Manchester's hands that we own, that we're not collecting taxes on. I want to deem it surplus, and I want 100% of those proceeds to go into our affordable housing trust fund. And that's what we did. So we deemed 15 parcels of land surplus, $1.13 million went into our affordable housing trust fund, and the first expenditure that we made out of that was $200,000 that went to a nonprofit that created 8 units for 8 women who were previously unhoused. So we were able to take individuals who were on our streets and place them into this building, and that just opened about a week and a half ago. We also have another proposal that I'm going to bring to the board. Andy, turn off your computer. But I'm going to bring this to the board next month that has to do with transitional housing and creating more units of transitional housing for individuals who were previously unhoused as well. But we also just got a housing champion designation from the state of New Hampshire, which opens up the ability for us to apply for millions of dollars in grants to bring in more housing, affordable housing specifically, into the city of Manchester. So when I talk about homelessness, I mean, I'm talking about a very specific problem. But housing affordability is the #1 issue in the city of Manchester because it touches on about 9 different things, homelessness being one, but also obviously the long-term affordability of the city. I don't want to see the city of Manchester turn into like a Manhattan where only certain people can live because the rates are exorbitant. Yeah.
And at what point do we start holding these landlords accountable for their building? Because, for instance, my building, my stove is older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been told if I want, I can move out. Instead of saying, okay, let's replace it because it's 40 years old, maybe 50, maybe 60. It's
Yeah.
to me.
So if,
At what point are we holding landlords accountable for the maintenance of their buildings, the upkeep of their buildings,
Yeah.
to make sure that Manchester's not looking like the dumps?
yeah, so we have code enforcement officers through the Planning and Community Development Department. If you want to send me an email about what your specific cases, I can easily forward that to our planning department and see if that's something that falls under the purview of what we can control. Absolutely, more than happy to do that. Our Director Belanger, is an amazing guy. He forgets more about zoning and code regulations before breakfast than I'll ever know. But we have I said this last week, and I said it at our department head meeting, and I have monthly department head meetings, and I said it in my State of the City, but we are really fortunate here, where we're a mid-sized city, but we're the biggest city in the state of New Hampshire. We are so fortunate to have the department heads that we have. Like, they are, to Alderman Vincent's point, these guys are subject matter experts. Not every municipality, a municipality of 5,000 people, not necessarily going to have the same expertise that we have here, just because we're a bigger city and we're required to, or it's a necessity to have that. But our department heads are amazing. Every time I call them, they always find ways to get to yes. So, hey, Mayor, we can't do it this way, but have you thought about doing it this way? Like, if you present me with a challenge or like an issue that we need to fix, we can find a way. Yes, sir, you had something.
Well, I can echo her concerns about traffic. I've lived here since '02. My kids went up through the system. I know Jim for longer than, for a while.
Yeah.
But going back to walkability, and I know we're short on enforcement, okay, but what can be done about bicycles, the motorized scooters, on the sidewalks, wrong way, just zipping through the intersections? That's one of the problems with the walkability. We have people, misusing
Yeah.
the space.
So let me speak to the accountability portion of it first, because we do have a shortage of police officers, but we're taking several steps to remedy that. So one thing I've talked about for the last few months, I included in my address last week, is that this year we have a generational opportunity to fix the compensation problems that we have in the city of Manchester on the city side. So the city of Manchester conducted a compensation study, which showed, portions of our city departments are underpaid. And that hurts our ability to recruit individuals, particularly, in the police department being one of them. So in the budget that I will unveil next month, as a statutory requirement, I have to do it by the end of March, I've included in that the compensation study, which is going to lift the salaries for pretty much every single city employee in the city of Manchester. So I think that's an important piece to it, to be able to attract and retain employees here, particularly within the police department. I've also been an outspoken advocate, along with the governor, in fixing the Group 2 pension problem that we have that has that has caused some of individuals who may have pursued police or fire or first responders to not go into that profession. So I think that's going to be an important fix to this. Last year, with our ARPA funds, we gave $100,000. The final round of our ARPA funds, I obligated $100,000, or the Board of Mayor and Aldermen obligated $100,000 to the police department to provide bonuses, which municipalities all over the state of New Hampshire are doing for certified police officers. So we weren't competitive previously. And now with the $100,000 that we gave them, we're more competitive in going after certified police officers elsewhere to bring them into Manchester to help try and close that gap. So there's a few things that we're doing to try and close that, to bring more police officers into here, which should help with the enforcement mechanisms that we're talking about. Yeah.
That wouldn't be me if I didn't talk politics. Obviously, both the school board, BMA are bipartisan. When we vote-
Nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan, that's
Yeah.
sorry. Supposed to be nonpartisan.
Yeah.
I go to all the school board meetings.
Yep. And BMA. I see you at most of the BMA.
I know, I've had too much schoolwork, I haven't been going to the BMA.
Yeah. You were there last night?
No.
Oh, I thought, I was thinking of the school board. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting you.
what is your plan on the BMA side to also encourage that, as I don't seem to see that on the BMA side, and I don't seem to see the willingness to have that nonpartisan teamwork on the BMA side.
I think it's incumbent upon me as mayor to lead by example. I mean, I can't force anybody to do anything, but I think if you look at what we've done on the city side, on the Board of Mayor and Alderman side, there have been very few times where I've had to break ties. So if you remove like some of the conversations that have been had from the equation and look at the work product, I think we have operated in a really bipartisan way. There have been very few instances where I've had to break an 8-7 tie, and I'm extraordinarily proud of that. So remove like the rhetoric piece of it, and just look at the work product that we've developed and put forth, and I think it's been overwhelmingly bipartisan. Just from a statistical standpoint, you can't, yeah, well, by using your language, it's been overwhelmingly bipartisan.
Yeah, my concern is just some of the rhetoric kind of feeds the separation of the city sometimes. And trying to bring us together versus separating.
Yeah. What I would say is, it's the thing that gets clicks, the thing that gets, likes on social media is the thing that's going to always draw attention, and that's the nature of the beast, right? But I would say I think those examples are fewer and far between when you look at the actual product and look at the actual like work product that I think we've put forward. So maybe once every 3-4 months we have a vibrant conversation about something. But by and large, the vast majority of our meetings, go by, relatively light. And last night was 45 minutes. The meeting prior wasn't. But look, the counter that I would give to that is we are dealing with issues and topics that impact literally the everyday life of an individual, whether it's sewer rates or school funding or homelessness or public safety. And these can be really emotional topics. I think it's important for all of us who hold elected office to hold ourselves to the highest standard possible, which is why I always try and comport myself in that way. I think about who is watching on TV, who is in the audience. I think people elect you to be responsible, sober, competent-minded individuals, and I always try and comport myself in that way. Yeah. Come on.
I have two questions. Quick one is for the new city grant writer, whenever that person starts.
They started 2 weeks ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, Angela Kavanaugh, and she's been terrific.
Okay, great.
She's already identified a few different areas.
She'll probably be very busy, I imagine. But I do wonder if there's any opportunity for local nonprofits to partner with her to
Yeah.
give her a grant on the city's behalf.
Yep.
She's open to communication.
100%. And that's what I said in my address last week, is that I think that this is an incredible opportunity for the city of Manchester to reach out. We have, it blows me away. It was something that I think I understood intuitively, but not until I got into the office did I fully, it's tangible at that point. I was at the Boys and Girls Club this morning to talk about Project Happy, something that came before the Board of School Committee a couple months ago. But in that room was leaders from, pretty much every section of the city dealing with, it was nonprofits, it was Trinity High School, Boys and Girls Club, obviously, but there's My Turn, there's MPAL, the list goes on and on. Friends of Anya right down the street from here. There are going to be incredible opportunities for us to reach out to our partners and say, hey, let's work together on this. I'm meeting tomorrow morning with Manchester Mental Health, and that's going to be an opportunity where we talk about, again, case managers, because that's something that they had a grant for previously that the grant just expired, and that happens. But is that an opportunity where we can talk about getting more mental health services into the city of Manchester? Yeah. Did you say it was a two-parter?
Another completely unrelated question, but
Monty Python, not for something completely different?
going back to actually the issue of homelessness and the Supreme Court's decision last year that would allow, and might be phrasing this incorrectly, but it functionally allowed the city to ban camping anywhere in the city, even if the person has nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little confused about what the enforcement about that is like. I know you said to the Ink Link or to media that it's it's really, the police department is not really arresting people for being homeless, even though that is kind of what the Supreme Court's decision was seen as.
Well, so just one quick clarification on that. This is not it's not a criminal violation. And I don't have the authority, just because we're a home rule state, I don't have the authority to criminalize something that which the state has not allowed for us to criminalize. It's a citation level offense. No one has been arrested because they are homeless in the city of Manchester.
So no one has been taken into custody?
No, not for that. Now, if a police officer were to come up upon somebody who is camping in a tent and they find drug paraphernalia, or they're using, or there's something else that is illegal that is going on, they may be arrested for that. But no one is being arrested because they don't have a house or an apartment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you feel like that Supreme Court decision and the city's subsequent policies have helped the situation, or do you feel like it's really just a situation where when you're moving people out of encampments, they're finding other places to go in Manchester?
So part of what I said before about the approach where I think you have to hold individuals accountable if they're not making the right decisions, if they're breaking the law, I think there's a deterrence mechanism to it. I think the city of Manchester has struggled previously because individuals from all over the state have been sent to the city of Manchester. And I think we had to send a message that, look, we are not going to tolerate this. So what I've said from the beginning is that if you want help and you need help in Manchester, we are there for you. If you are here to ignore our ordinances or break our laws, we are not going to tolerate that. If you've watched the Board of Mayor and Alderman meetings from the 14 months that I've been in office, I've been an advocate for keeping the engagement center open so that a person has a place to go, so that they're not on our streets in the downtown or over here on the west side, so that they have a place to go to get connected to services. But what we can't have happen, I don't think encampments are good for the individuals that are living in them, and I also don't think that they're good for the city. Regardless of whether an illegal activity is occurring within an encampment, you don't feel safe when you walk by an encampment. I think it adds to a perception of the city of Manchester as unsafe, but I also don't think it's good for an individual that is in there. So if we can use these kinds of things as a deterrence mechanism to say, look, go to the engagement center, go to Families in Transition, go to Waypoint, go to Helping Hands, get connected to services, and let's get you help, and let's get you out of the current situation you're in and break the underlying cycle. Homelessness should be rare, brief, and one time. And we should do everything in our power to get somebody from A to Z.
I know the city has many.
I'm sorry?
How do you prevent them, what are the programs to prevent them from being homeless?
Yeah, so the welfare department. The welfare department. In my budget alone this year, we're going to have to add $300,000 to our welfare department for preventative measures. The welfare department is a massive preventative measure.
I would like to add, I previously worked at Hillsborough County Department of Corrections as a nurse, and one of the things we would see, because it's the county facility, is they get brought from all over the county, the courts
To the city of Manchester,
to the city of Manchester,
and then released.
the courts will release them, but be like, yeah, you can't go home, and then they're left with nothing on the streets of Manchester. So then they have nowhere to go. So then we end up with everybody from around the county being sent to Manchester, and I saw it all the time.
You could be in Western Hillsborough and get arrested, almost closer to Vermont than you are to the city of Manchester, and now be a Manchester resident on our streets because you got released from Hillsborough County Jail. So I grew up in Salem, Rockingham County. The Rockingham County Jail is in Brentwood, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it was pretty routine, because you go to court and the judge will release you. You don't have a ride, you don't have money, you have the clothes you went to jail with, and that's it. You have nowhere to go, you're on the street, and you're on the streets of Manchester. So what are you gonna do at that point? And I met numerous inmates who were like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, trying to figure out, where am I gonna stay tonight, I can't get a job because I have this record now. And it was heartbreaking at times. They'd be in there for a minor drug offense and they can't get a job. They got removed from where they live because they can't get a ride back. And they're now on the streets of Manchester.
So one of the things the legislature up in Concord and the county delegation was looking at was pretrial services. So is there a way that we can send you back to your last known address so that the individual is not here in the city of Manchester, and things of that nature? Because it puts a big burden on the city.
And we're the only county in the state without pretrial service.
Correct.
anybody, because, you know, public service is not easy, I get that, but, you know, Hillsborough County is sitting on tens of millions of dollars. That, you know, I'm sure they have reasons to need reserves and whatever else, but without having a drug court, you know, the only county in the state, without these other services, I think members of the public could put some pressure, and maybe in the city of Manchester, we should lead and encourage them, let's put it that way, to look at their look at what they're doing, and if the money's there and exists in funding, then there should be no reason why they wouldn't do it.
One of the hard parts I found was the courts. Like, we would have an inmate having a psychiatric issue, he would get arrested, nonviolent offense, get arrested, we would get him an appointment for an evaluation up at the state psychiatric facility, and the courts would release him before his appointment. Well, the minute an inmate's released, we had to cancel his appointments. A week later, he'd get arrested again. We'd get another appointment. Have it all set up, he'd get released again. And so he just was constantly on the street, and I think it took us about 2 years before we actually got him up for his evaluation because the courts kept releasing him.
We do have a drug court, both in here in Manchester and in Nashua. We have Hillsborough County North and South, because I go to all those graduations. Yeah.
Hillsborough County, the drug court?
Yeah. Yeah. Others?
I can give some
Okay.
Ward 11 updates if you like.
Yeah, I got a question, but I don't live in Ward 11.
Let's let Norm give the updates. So last night Norm spoke really well on behalf of the ward when he was talking about snow emergencies and parking over here. So I'm sure you might have something else, but did I get it? All right.
On it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. Ward 11, as most of you know that are in the ward, one of our biggest challenges is parking. Dubuque, Cartier, Remy, they're terrible. You know, you could put 100 cars on that street, but there's only enough for 30. So, you know, you got residents that are parking 3-4 streets beyond, and then you got a snow emergency, and then that adds another whole obstacle to the area, and then you've got even odd street, you know, months, that's another obstacle to itself. So I'm working with HCA. Everybody's familiar with HCA, they just took over CMC. And what I'm trying to do is to try to get some space down there in that parking lot area behind St. Mary's, to try to utilize that during storms. It hasn't happened yet, but it's in process. So hopefully that uncongests a lot of our traffic issues, and it's not across the river. It's not all the way at the end of Kelly Street. It's just right down there. Most of our congested areas are right at this end anyways, so it would be a great opportunity for them to get some parking there. So I'm working on a meeting with Mr. John Skelton. He's the president, and then once I get that, hopefully that goes through and get some opportunities to decongest the parking a little bit. The roads, I do talk often with the DPW about the roads with the plowing. Because of our congested ward, in my opinion, it's the most congested ward. There's challenges with the plow trucks because you have those people that just can't, they just don't park where they're supposed to park. So the trucks go around it, and we don't have enough plow trucks, we don't have enough tow trucks to tow everybody in the city, nor do we want to. But there are some vehicles that we do notice that when I drive the ward, I see a car that's embedded in snow, and it's been there for 4 or 5 days, 6 days. You kind of know that car doesn't need to be there. Then I'll make a call and I'll try to have the car removed or ticketed so that they have 24 hours to remove the vehicle. So I'm actively engaged in that throughout the ward. The sidewalks, I get a lot of calls about the sidewalks. As Mr. Clordy said last night, they're working, still working now from the last 2 storms. They can get the problems. We had back-to-back storms which produced a lot of ice. And there's a lot of snow, so the truck that goes on the sidewalk, it would push the snow up and it would fall right behind the truck. So it's kind of not working. So what they're doing now is they're actually getting out there with snow plows, hand plows, plow the sidewalks. The priority again, schools, churches, hospital areas, and then they're going to work the side streets. Roads, get it, working on it. I'm going to make a pitch to the mayor with the upcoming budget to try to get some money in Ward 11 to fix some of our roads. Anybody that drives the Amoskeag Bridge knows it's terrible. There's more holes on that than a package of Swiss cheese. It's a terrible road. Amoskeag Bridge is it's just all holes. You're going to have a new front end if you keep driving on it for more than a week. So those kind of roads we're going to look at. Notre Dame has some bad sidewalks from years of plows just tearing them up. So all these areas I have note, I'm going to make a pitch to the mayor to get all the money that we need to fix these first and prioritized Ward 11 streets.
DOT has something in the works for MSK.
Yes, yeah, for that whole circle, but,
This is, you're
No,
talking
no,
about
the
the part
bridge-
close to
the
the
bridge
Elm.
is-
yeah, I'm talking
Where it's
about
been
the
like a
bridge
mess
part,
for
not
like
the
Yeah,
actual
decades.
highway.
the bridge
part.
itself, they're closing
Yeah.
down part of the bridge.
Go by where the fish, because I believe Ward 11,
Yeah.
So
we
you're not
own
talking
that
about, you're
side.
not talking about over the river, you're talking about before that.
Yeah, I'm talking about from Elm Street to the river.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where it's been a mess for
Yeah.
like the past decade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's-
did a story a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's
They're-
terrible.
they
When I
got
go
a
by
plan- They got a plan for it.
I go to board meetings, I always take that road, I'm always afraid I'm gonna get a flat on the front end. Homeless was an issue, I did hear that, I do get calls on that. We had a lot of homeless issues off of Eddy Road. We took care of most of those. The problem we run into now is, unfortunately, it's the cleanup part. It's a lot of work, and when there's paraphernalia, drug and whatnot, it's just a lot. So we're working on those, and we're hoping that we can clean that up sooner than later. It just takes time. But there are no homeless people in Eddy Road at this time, and I do run that route as well quite often, and that's behind Coolidge. So all those residents are very well at keeping me informed if they have somebody in their yard. Trying to bring light to Kelly Street. We have small businesses on Kelly Street. Everybody talks about downtown. Everybody talks about all these other areas, and I know you got that big plans.
Well, I was going to say, I've heard you talk about this before. I think that's probably something that we can incorporate into our budget this year, where we do like I could bifurcate it and say X amount of funds for the downtown, X amount over here for Kelly
Yeah,
Road.
see, guys need a voice on the west side, right? So we're gonna get that Kelly Street a little more hyped up. It's the heart of our ward. We got those small businesses there, we got the cobbler, we got those appliance, Jimmy's, I mean, everybody eats at Jimmy's.
Got the
So
best tailor in the city.
we got Best Taylor, that's my suit. So Kelly Street is
Suit.
where it's at. Well, my suit.
Suit. He's got the one.
When you're the mayor, you can have multiple suits.
Well, that's an inside joke because he chastised me for my suit choice last
That's a
week
hard word. Hard word.
on the Board of School Committee last Monday, and then I wore that same suit intentionally last night for the BMA meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty clever. Pretty clever. That just goes to show you that I watch both meetings.
Yeah.
Because I like to be informed. I don't know if anybody knows about OYS, the Office of Youth and Services. They're based on top of the Cashin Center. It's a great organization, great group of people. Michael runs he's the director, great guy. And I believe, you might even be aware of this too, is that he's gonna try to get more involved with the Manchester School District to try to get some match fund. We're gonna try to work with them to get them a little more what they need so they can be more involved in the schools. It's super, I encourage you to look them up and do the research on them, but I'm working with OYS to try to get more school presence, because they're just wonderful.
I think Gossler is #1 on his list. If he were to get another employee, the first one would go here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So the
he's
schools
working.
I've worked in that have had
OYS.
OIS staff have
It's
been
incredible.
great.
Yeah, and we don't want to lose
And-
them from the west side.
No.
Yeah.
And
So we're gonna keep here.
they've had great relationships with the students and
Yeah.
had a great impact.
And I did hear code enforcement. I do get calls on code enforcement. That's actually just a simple phone call, and they look it up, because I had code enforcement issues in back alleys where people would throw furniture, and you guys all see it. If you guys drive Amory, sometimes you see that one house where I'm dating myself, but it's where the old fire station used to be, that big yellow house. There always seems to be a bedroom worth of furniture just put there. And unfortunately, the city pays to pick that up because people just dump it there. So we work with code enforcement. I try to take care of things like that as well. So if you see me driving around the ward in my white Suburban, it's because I'm making notes and I'm trying to take care of things. The C-Click Fix app is huge, and it's highly encouraged at all levels. C-Click Fix.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's just an app you can download
Yep.
onto your phone, and if you see something, say something, right?
Take a
So
picture and
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I had the Manchester Connect.
Same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the app.
all right, I use that.
So as
Yeah.
the alderman, I actually have it set that when somebody in Ward 11 does something, I get a message and I follow up on it. I may not tell the person I'm following up on it,
Yeah.
but I'll monitor it. And if it's there for more than 2-3 days without a reply, then I'll call the director. That's who we call directors. And then the director knows that, hey, we're watching it, and then they try to work it. Or they'll explain to it. And there was some things, there was a light pole on Kelly Street that was gone forever and a day. And the reason why it took so long is because it was unique and they had to fabricate it and get it, so it took almost a month and a half. But there, anytime I see someone with a stop sign by the schools, I've made calls, we get those fixed. Those can be fixed same day. Crosswalks, we're working on it. I'm tracking your crosswalks. Because if there's a crosswalk, I don't know why we can't just repaint the line at least until we can figure out what we're gonna do with the poles. Just something to make it more visible, more tangible when people are walking.
Excuse me, regarding snow emergencies,
Yes,
okay?
the bane of our existence.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I call snow emergencies a suggestion
Yeah, yeah.
in the city.
Sometimes they are, when you
Yeah.
get like no snow, yeah. I get it.
But, like, I just live over in Bartlett, between Sullivan and Putnam. And, so, where the schools are, okay, is it possible to concentrate a little bit on getting those streets cleared? Okay, I can't tell you, I've been here since '02, and I can't tell you the last time I saw a ticket or a tow truck on Bartlett Street. All right, to the point where a bunch of years ago, I had to call the then alderman at the time
Mhm.
to have the snow removed on both sides of the street, because I had 2 school buses that couldn't get by.
Right.
They were backing up from Bartlett back onto Putnam because the cars had, you know, were either
Yeah.
didn't move or they were coming by too late and the cars had already been parked there.
Right,
It's the same on Amory too.
yeah, but I just got a call for Bartlett, because Bartlett's on the other side of Parkside Ave, right? The far end, am I thinking of the right area? Right here,
Right here,
okay.
yeah.
So, yeah, so it is right here, we're behind Parkside Ave, I forgot we're so close to Parkside. So I did get a call because it was missed, because they seen that came down and they didn't go to the left, right, the far ends. So, 2 storms in a row, I think it's new drivers, so they're learning their routes. And on the other side, on Parkside Ave, there was a problem where they kind of were pushing the snow into driveways, so we had to take care of that. So I have gotten calls about Bartlett, so I'm aware of it. I'm just hoping that the couple of calls I've made hopefully fixes it for the next storm. But I give you my card, you can call me. It takes 2 minutes for me to call the director and get it fixed. It's that quick, especially when it comes to roads and clearing. That's an easy fix.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it's tough because, like was pointed out, I mean, this is a walking school. You know,
Yep.
with 3 schools, and that's all we have, are, you know.
Yep.
kids.
They try to do these areas first too, for that reason.
Specifically, right?
Yeah, they try to do those. But don't ever hesitate, just give me a call, give me a text, and all I gotta just say the street,
Yep.
and then I'll just call Mr. Clardy and we'll get it taken care of. Super, they're super at DPW. They're willing to do anything, they won't say no,
Yeah.
and they'll get it done, especially in this area where they know it's the school.
Mhm.
And I've dealt with the streets by West as well, those side outlets where the students walk a
Yeah.
lot.
Mhm.
We have them go there to double check that as well.
Parking and traffic in the winter is horrible.
If I had my way, we would never have snow, so we wouldn't have the issue.
Well,
Yeah.
Run on that next time?
Yeah. If we had
My
the,
lips, no
Yeah.
more snow.
Yeah.
No, it's a challenge. It's my biggest, I'm sure the mayor, I say it all the time, it's my number one thing. What am I gonna do about parking for my ward when we have these snow emergencies? I'm not a fan, and I'll say it publicly, I'm not a fan of the odd even month. I don't like it. It doesn't serve a purpose most of the time. It just adds more struggles for areas like this part of the city, because we have that much congestion. We're a unique ward where we're just all mushed. It's the best ward in the city. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, but we have that challenge that it's just a constant thing that we're working on. But we're getting there. I feel it. We're getting there.
so we're 5 past.
Sorry, I-
No, you're fine. I'm glad you did it.
Apologies.
Yeah. So
TV, so I was all excited.
do we need to redo his part? I'll give you my mic.
No, oh,
You
you
want
got a mic? I
to?
didn't-
I got a mic. Yeah.
I feel
I hope you caught all of that.
I was cheated on.
We'll get you subtitles.
Yeah.
We'll add an R in parking for your subtitles. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming out. Really appreciate it. We'll be here. Well, this is the one town hall we'll have, but we'll be back around a number of times. And always feel free to call your alderman. He's always Johnny on the spot for this kind of stuff. And yeah. So thank you all so much. Appreciate it.